buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
And we're live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Tuesday. This is our weekly deep dive. That's right. We get into the weekly top three with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He joins us this morning to discuss three big topics of his choosing, which he thinks are important for us to know, understand, and get down into the nitty-gritty on. Get down into it. So we're going to be doing that here in just a quick second. In hour two, I'll have some recap and some of my thoughts on Brad's points, plus some other headlines, including the latest on the governor's race. Somebody just jumped in. We'll talk about that as well. And then, of course, we'll finish up with our weekly life coaching lesson with Chris Story, which will give us a little bit of positive spin on everything. We need the bandages after the, we need the soothing, the balm. So that'll be it for today's program. Without further ado, let's jump right into it, get things ready to rock and roll, and bring Brad Keithley on board from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He joins us right now. Good morning, Brad. How are you?
Michael, I'm doing great today. Happy birthday, or happy birthday a couple of days ago, but happy birthday widespread.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you very much. It was a great weekend. I truly enjoyed it. I got a chance to do absolutely nothing, and I took it, and it was fantastic. You could not ask for a better weekend. So appreciate you saying that. All right, Brad. Well, we've got a lot to cover today, so I want to get right down into the heart of it. We're going to start off with this week's topics, including what you call the tough election cycle. And that's coming up because of what I've been teasing the last few days, which is the latest report from the EIA. Tell me what this is, Brad, and why should I care?
So the Energy Information Agency is a U.S. federal agency. It, along with two other global agencies, publish a global view of the oil market once monthly. OPEC, the Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries, does one. They call it the Monthly Oil Market Report. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, does one. And then EIA does a third. IEA, the International Energy Agency, and OPEC really do broad-based supply-demand evaluations. The short-term energy outlook from EIA really gets down into the weeds and takes that global picture and narrows the focus down into what the impact is on price. This month, both OPEC and IEA talked a lot about the supply-demand picture. IEA in particular said the supply-demand picture with OPEC Plus's recent announcement that they're going to lower the production cuts that they put in place all the way back in COVID, but continuing shortly after, is going to lower the production cuts, which will increase supply. And IEA looked at that and said, boy, this is going to have a big impact on supply-demand balance because we don't see demand growing at the same pace as what supply is going to grow as OPEC lowers the production cuts. And IEA, in fact, ended its analysis by saying something's got to give. EIA took that or took its own analysis, which came to the same place as IEA, that there's a big imbalance between supply and demand. EIA followed through on that and said the thing that's going to give is price. And this is what EIA said in its opening paragraph. Significant growth in oil supply will cause crude oil prices to fall in the coming months. In our forecast, the Brent crude oil price falls from $71 per barrel in July to $58 in the fourth quarter of 25, and fourth quarter EIA uses calendar year quarters, so they're talking about October through December, cause it to drop to $58 in the fourth quarter and $49 per barrel in March and April of 2026. And then it goes through, the extension, the extended impact of that through the end of next year, which is the usual period over which EIA forecasts prices. I took that in last week's or in this week's landmine column that was published on Friday. I took that and I took that through to Alaska. What does that mean for Alaska revenues, and what does that mean for the Alaska budget? And if you've got the revenues chart, Michael, let's pop that up. If anybody wants to look at these in detail, they're in the current Friday Alaska landmine column that I do. And this follows. No, that's the flip up the other one. That's the there we go. So this follows through the price forecasts on the left-hand side from the fall 2024 oil price forecast that the governor's budget was based on. The governor's proposed budget for FY26 was based on, follows it through to the spring revenue forecast from EIA from DOR. And then DOR published a second spring forecast, if you'll recall, when the governor did the vetoes, and the governor explained that the vetoes were necessary because of the drop in oil price and the drop in revenues. Follows it through to that second EIA or DOR price forecast, and then follows it through to the EIA, the current EIA forecast. And as you can see, oil prices drop from $70 in the fall forecast on which the governor's budget was based to $68 on which the legislature's FY26 budget was based, to $64 for FY26 on which the governor's vetoes was based, and now we're at $56.25 when you restate the EIA forecast on a Alaska fiscal year basis. And you can see the drop in unrestricted general fund revenues that are going along with that. The governor's the revised DOR forecast that came out along with the governor's vetoes was down 10% from the spring, which was already down 3% from the fall. The EIA forecast drops out another 6% from that 10% drop in the revised DOR forecast for FY26.
And in real dollars, that means unrestricted general funds from when the governor first proposed the budget of $2.4 billion down to $1.9 billion.
Right, over $400 million drop. Now let's go to the next chart. This follows through to what this means for the budget and the status of the budget. When the legislature left, they set the budget based upon the spring forecast. And after the governor's vetoes that the governor did after the legislature left, there was like $175 million surplus, actually an excess. What that actually is an excess PFD cut, but $175 million surplus in the budget based upon the spring forecast. After the override, the legislative override of the K through 12 bill, that surplus was down to $130 million, again based upon the spring forecast. But then you look at the two subsequent price forecasts out there, the DOR, the revised DOR forecast on which the governor based the vetoes. You use that as the base, and that comes down to roughly a $90 million deficit in the budget. This is what the EIA forecast means. The EIA forecast drops at another $140 million. So we're now looking at a potential $250 million $250 million, $250 million, to be precise, $234 million deficit in the FY26 budget as a result of the revised oil prices. If the revised oil prices that are in the EIA forecast come through for FY26.
Yeah, that's the budget. And just for clarification for the listeners, for folks who can't see the chart, that's for the budget that was just passed. So that's the year we're going into, almost $250 million deficit in the current year that we just passed the budget for. We're not talking about next year. We're talking about this year.
Right. We're talking about the budget that just got passed, that the legislature thought they were leaving Juneau with a surplus. And now, if the price forecasts come through, now we're looking at $250 million deficit. The reason I say that this really upends the 2026 campaign is you think through the timing. The campaign's really going to get going during spring next year, during the legislative session. Now that we've got a lot of candidates in here, it may start earlier, but it's at least going to start next spring. And the legislature is going to come back into Juneau the first of the year facing this huge deficit that thgoing to have to deal with first thing. I mean, they've already set spending. Revenues, because of the way we do oil revenues are going to be bouncing around. But if the EIA forecast is good, we're going to be looking at $250 million revenue when they come back into Juneau. And then the legislature, when it comes into session next year, will be starting to work on the FY27 budget. We'll work on the FY27 budget. And you look at what the price forecast, the drop in the price forecast for FY27 is, and you can see that's another $400 million plus or minus that reduction in revenues that the legislature is going to be dealing with next year. Another huge deficit year. So the campaign, the 2026 campaign is going to be based if the EIA forecast is correct. These campaigns are going to be based on in an environment in which the legislature is having to deal with this huge deficit for FY26 when they walk in the door through supplementals or through pulling more money out of reserves that we don't have or something. And then in FY27 they're going to be dealing with an even deeper deficit than they thought they were going to be dealing with when they did the FY26 budget, which was already, they claimed it, a tight budget. So we're going to be dealing in an environment. The 2026 campaign is going to go off in an environment in which oil prices are dropping, and candidates are going to have to be talking about what the fiscal plan is to respond to this environment in which we've got rapidly dropping, deeply dropping oil prices. And I think that's going to reshape the 2026 campaign in a way that I'm not sure people have thought through yet. They're going to, instead of talking about what new program they can layer on, instead of Tom Begich being able to talk about what additional programs he's going to bring, they're going to have to be talking about how they're going to deal with these huge deficits on the oil price as a result of the oil price drop, and what plan they're going to have in place when they take office for dealing with a significantly reduced outlook from the standpoint of oil prices.
Because again, just to be clear, we're talking about when they come back in January, almost $250 million in supplemental spending because the price will be down, and then an additional $1.4 billion down if the EIA numbers hold. We're talking about $1.75 billion, $1.75 billion in deficit. That's just based on the current spending level with no additional spending, just the escalators that are built in and everything else. $1.75 billion.
Yep. And we've got, I haven't looked at the latest CBR number, but it's not much. It may be a little bit north of 2. It may be between 2 and 3. CBR anymore is really the accumulated PFD cuts that they sort of saved up for future use. And so it's maybe between $2 and $3 billion. So, you can easily see that sort of being wiped out between these two deficits. And it's just, it's going to be a significantly different environment. The 2026 campaign, what EIA is telling us, if this oil forecast holds, is it's going to be a significantly different environment. out there in 2026 than I think what people have previously imagined. A significantly different fiscal environment for the state coming forward.
Before we go here, Brad, quickly, you know, if the number holds, what's the probability? How close has EIA been in the past? I mean, what do we think here? I mean, is this a 50-50 proposition? Is this a, you know, more than 50% proposition that these prices will actually happen the way that they are?
Well, everything changes over time. So it's based upon the supply demand outlook that EIA and IEA essentially share. If demand grows at a significantly higher rate than what either EIA or IEA is forecasting, it'll soak up some of that excess supply, and it will increase price. OPEC, for its part, in its monthly report, projected higher demand growth than either IEA or EIA. So that's one factor. If somehow the world economy strengthens faster than forecast. The other is on the supply side, and the supply side. What these forecasts are based upon is some moderate decline or some moderate decline in the pace of growth. There you go. In non-OPEC supplies, and sort of this huge jump as a result of OPEC reducing the production cuts on the OPEC plus side. If either of those don't hold, if, for example, the non-OPEC supply drops at a faster pace than projected in response to price, or if OPEC, seeing the impact on price, decides to sort of slow the production cuts that they're pursuing, then that would reduce supply and increase price. So it's based upon the supply demand outlook that the agencies have right now. None of them, other than OPEC, but none of them really foresee changes in that demand side picture. They both do detailed analysis of the world economy, and they see that demand forecast holding up. The real variable is going to be on the supply side. And if OPEC decides not to pull the string on all of these production cuts, or if there's a big price response on the non-OPEC side in terms of slowing supply growth, then the supply side may fall short, and these prices may be a little bit higher.
All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We got more coming up. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. This chart is going to be the chart to show all the candidates at this point, to show this is what you're potentially looking at. What do you think? How are you going to fix it? What are you going to do? That's going to be the big chart right there for folks to remember and listen to for sure. Brad, Frank says 26 campaigns will not have a different environment. It will tell voters what they want to hear. And that's what I'm afraid of, because what about the fiscal plan? What about, I mean, yesterday we had Will Stapp on, and I asked about a fiscal plan, and it kind of got shoveled under the carpet. I mean, there was just, the answer was elect better people, which again, the people in the room are the ones that we have to work with. I mean, yeah, we'd be nice to elect more fiscally responsible adults, but that just doesn't seem to be the answer at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. The legislature is going to have to talk about these deficits. They're going to have to talk about the fact that FY26 revenues are coming in way below, assuming the EIA projections hold, that FY26 revenues are coming in way below that they forecast. And they got this huge deficit that they're going to have to deal with in FY26. And if the legislature has to talk about that, then the news media are going to be talking about it, and that's going to set the environment that the candidates are going to be talking in. The legislature is also going to have to talk about the FY27 budget, and they're going to have to talk about the fact that revenues are are coming in much lower than previously projected, and they're going to have to talk about how they're going to deal with that in the FY27 budget, and the legislature is going to have to deal with that, or the news media is going to pick up on that and have to talk about that. Also, you've also got one interesting wild card in this. Lyman Hoffman's retiring, and in his retirement year, in his retirement session, he seems to have decided that he's just going to, tell the truth. And so, he's been honest. Even Will pointed that out yesterday in yesterday's discussion with you. And so Lyman, I think, is going to be, as co-chair of Senate Finance, is going to be talking about this perhaps more than he otherwise might, more than if he was campaigning for re-election. So, yes, candidates. Bernadette may continue to talk about full PFD and no taxes and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, they may continue to do that, but the credibility of them saying that in the face of these deficits that the legislature is going to be having to deal with, both FY26 and FY27, the credibility of candidates, often la la land, talking about you can do all this stuff and you don't have to worry about a fiscal plan. I think the credibility of those candidates is going to be severely tested.
Yeah, it's going to be problematic. And now again, we've got 10 in the field, and we don't know how many more will throw their hat in the ring here between now and whenever. But so far, I'm not seeing anybody that's jumping up and offering a full fiscal plan of any kind, or even a really partial fiscal plan at this point. It's vote for me, chicken in every pot. And I don't have a whole lot of hope at this point.
Yeah, and it's not like there isn't a plan out there. The legislature's 2021 fiscal policy working group plan that Shelley Hughes was a part of. God, you'd think she'd adopt it, but that plan's sitting there that says a little bit of everything, a little bit of all the above, a little bit of spending cuts, a little bit of new revenues, a little bit of PFD cuts down to POMV 50/50, a little bit of this and a little bit of oil revenues, and that plan, it sort of spreads the burden in a way. I talk a lot about rate design and revenue design, and what you want to do in revenue design and rate design is you want to spread the burden as much as you can to get the divisor up and to have the impact on any one group low. That plan spreads the burden more than almost any plan I've seen. So it's not like they don't have a plan they can talk about. There's one sitting there,
Right.
But no one seemed to. Not even Shelley, one of the authors of the plan, has jumped up on it.
Yeah, she didn't. I gave her the softball, asking her, she just didn't want to deal with it. All right, here we go, folks. Jumping back into it, the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right, welcome back. We continue with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. We're on to number two, which is happy birthday to Social Security, and you're about to die. 7 years is the latest number. 7 years until the benefits basically end if we don't do something. And this affects Alaska as well. Alaska has a Social Security problem as well, Brad.
So Social Security is sort of the coming. If oil prices are the issue that's going to drive, I think, the Alaska fiscal discussion over the next couple of years, Social Security is sort of the issue that's coming on the federal scene. That's going to take a lot of oxygen, a lot of effort to resolve. And it's not apocalyptic in the sense that Social Security, your benefits go from wherever they are now down to zero. What's going on is this: over the years that the current generation, or the current elderly generation, or the current senior generation, or whatever, however you want to call them, over the years that the baby boom generation, there we go. Over the years that the baby boom generation was working, Social Security built up a big pot of money, a big reserve, They weren't using all of the current revenues. I mean, like a pension plan, they weren't using all the current revenues to pay benefits. They were building up this big reserve that was going to sit there, earn money, and it did, and sort of sit there for when baby boomers retired, and then baby boomers would benefit from that, would start draining it down like you do with any pension plan, for a variety of reasons, including lower contribution rates than what an actuary would say baby boomers ought to be contributing into Social Security in order to build up enough of a reserve. For a variety of reasons, the reserve isn't big enough to see the baby boomers through, or to see Social Security through. And so what the projection is, all these projections about timing, is when the reserve is going to be gone. And once the reserve is gone, all that's going to be available for Social Security is what the current working generation is contributing in, that's going to be turned around and be distributed in benefits. There's not going to be any buildup or reserve by the current working generation. Everything they're contributing in is going to be immediately turned around and sent to the currently retired generation. And so the benefit that's been built up through this surplus is going to disappear. When it does, the current Social Security retirement rates, the current Social Security benefits that are set in law, will have to drop, because you won't be able to pull on the reserve for the additional money. The drop's going to be significant. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget does great work on this and other federal issues, and they've done a recent analysis of what the impact is of that drop when the reserve depletes, what that drop's going to be. And for a medium income family, these are national numbers, but it's going to be generally applicable to everybody. For medium income single working person or single retired person, the drop's going to be about $14,000 a year. For a married family, or two that are in retirement, a man and a wife who are in retirement, or a married couple that is in retirement, the drop's going to be about $18,000, $18,500 a year. So the drop's going to be significant. And again, that's the impact of the reserve coming off. The thing about these numbers is they may go even lower, because all you're doing is you're recycling what the current working generation is contributing into the plan. If you continue to have a contraction in the current working generation, as some are concerned we're going to have, because of the drop off in population growth, or the drop, or the AI revolution that's going to drop employment. If you continue to have a decline in the employment, the contribution to Social Security is going to drop, and that amount that's coming over to the retirement group is going to drop as well. So these numbers are sort of the best projection of what it's going to be like at the beginning of the drop, but the drop can be even more significant. That this comes through to Alaska, because Alaska is projected to already has a significant retirement population. Already roughly 15% of the Alaska population is retired, living on Social Security benefits, or in part living on Social Security benefits. But that's projected, Alaska is projected to gray significantly over the next 20 or so years, growing from 15% of the population up to 20% of the population if the Alaska population continues to grow. If you look at Department of Labor's recent projections about a population decline in Alaska over the next 20 or 30 years, then the percent of the population that is retired grows even higher, because the projection of decline is more the working population, the working age population, than it is the retirement age population. The retirement age population sort of sticks here, and it's the working age population that is out migrating. So the percentage of Alaskans that are retired in that scenario grows even higher than the than the 20% that's projected with some moderate population growth in Alaska. If you start looking at 20% of the population facing significant cuts, I mean, I would say 18,000 to a medium income family, roughly $20,000 in cuts to a retired couple is not going to be immaterial to their economic well-being. And if you start looking at that sort of cut to 20% of the population, you're going to see a material amount of contraction in the amount of money that's in the economy, that's in the consumer economy, or it's in the savings economy or the investment economy, or whatever segment of the economy you want to look at. You're going to see a significant contraction of money in the economy. So it's a national problem. That Social Security is a national problem, but it has significant economic implications for Alaska if it's not solved at the national level through the level of cuts that are going to hit Alaska, the Alaska retired population as a consequence. Most people say, "Oh, this problem will get solved. Congress will do something," and it's sort of, again, to pick up on a comment that Will made yesterday. Will said, "Well, people kick the can, and it's the last guy who ultimately has to face it and has to make draconian steps to make it work." And it's getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, the current projection out there, or the current discussion on the table about how we solve this, is to increase the retirement age. So we reduce the population that's drawing on Social Security, cut the benefits or cap the benefits to that population that is retired, so that limits the draw on Social Security. Increase the tax essentially on the population that's working to increase the revenue flow into Social Security, and that comes through two steps. One is to increase the tax itself, but also there's a cap on Social Security, who pays Social Security, or what portion of your income you pay Social Security on, is better put. And so one of the steps under discussion is to increase the cap for those who the cap on the wages that you pay Social Security on, to increase the revenues on Social Security. So there's a number of steps, and they're getting worse and worse and worse. The closer and closer we get, the less and less that's in the reserve, the faster we're draining the reserve, or the lower the reserve is as we go along, the more draconian the steps have to be. Two things made it worse. The one big bill, by reducing the level of tax on Social Security benefits, which cycled back into the Social Security system, the one big beautiful bill, by reducing the tax on Social Security benefits, increases or reduces the time that we have remaining before we hit the X date of draining the reserve, and also the step that we took earlier to essentially allow double dipping by retirees who had non-Social Security who'd contributed to non-Social Security plans and had benefits from non-Social Security plans, but also had contributed in some way to Social Security. The step we took, which was praised in Alaska because we have a lot of these people up here, the step that allowed them to draw on Social Security benefits in addition to their non-Social Security retirement, also reduced the reserve, and is shortening the time frame within which we have to deal with this problem. So the problem is there. The time frame is getting closer. The steps we have to take, because we have the draining reserve, the steps we have to take are increasingly dramatic, and that's the situation we face. And Alaska faces a consequence of that because of the significant level of our population, which is in, or will be at the time this hits, in retirement.
Yeah. I mean, if you're my age and you're counting on Social Security benefits as some kind of retirement or bailout, you're going to be severely disappointed, I think, is what the answer is, because again, as they've drained the reserve, and there used to be 14 people contributing for every one recipient, and now it's down to 2. It's down to 2 people contributing for every one recipient. And that's obviously not sustained. I mean, when they used to criticize Nick Begich for saying it was a Ponzi scheme, but that's almost the very definition of a Ponzi scheme, when you got people paying in to the people who are drawing out, and that number continues to go down. That's a huge problem right there.
Yeah, and although it's counterintuitive to some people, the limitations on immigration that we're adopting, not only in this administration, the last administration as well, but the tightening on immigration rules that we have is increasing the problem, because immigrants, even the non-documented ones, even the illegal ones, when they work, they contribute to Social Security. That amount is deducted from their paycheck. They don't. It's not that they don't pay taxes. It's that their employers are withdrawing the money. So immigrants, when they work, are contributing to Social Security, and illegal immigrants can't draw from Social Security. So they're actually building the fund. As you're constricting the immigrant population, you're restricting the number of workers, and so it's having the effect of increasing the problems with Social Security as well. It's getting us down to that two workers for every one retiree issue that you talked about.
Well, this is going to get gruesome here in the next few years, and the question is, do they have? But it's like Will said yesterday, like you said, they just keep kicking the can down the road. It's a game of musical chairs, and everybody keeps leaving with a chair, and there's one guy left standing, and there's no more damn chairs. Is what's going on. He's like looking around, the music stops, and he's like, there is no chair. Yeah. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We got more coming up. One more. We'll be continuing here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll be back right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
No, Tracer, that's not what Brad said. Did Brad Keithley just encourage killing off Granny and Grandpa over dollars? How does he propose to reduce the number of elderly? That's not what, I don't think that was the point he was making, but you hear what you want to hear. That's what it is right there. Brad, this is a big deal, because I think a lot of people are, I'm eyes wide open about my retirement. I know that Social Security will probably not be there for me, but many people are counting of it to be their retirement plan. Essentially, I paid into it my whole life. I should get out of it. But it's not. That's not what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, and it's not, Michael. I mean, even the people who are preparing for it, like you, who say, "Well, I'm not going to count on Social Security, so I'm doing whatever it is I need to do to prepare myself when I get to those years, prepare myself to be there without Social Security." There's going to be less money in the economy as a result of it. I mean, we've got an increasing retirement age. We've got an increasing share of the population that's retirement age. Social Security is a mechanism by which we get money to that segment of the economy and that segment of the population, and that segment of the population then largely spends it. And so it generates activity in the economy. If we're take that out in terms of reduction cuts, you may be ready for it. The next person over may be ready for it. The next 20 people may not be ready for it, and that's its own problem. But even we're reducing the amount of dollars that are coming into that share of the economy. Now, the flip side is, to solve this problem, We're going to have to make some of that reduction anyway. We're going to have to cap benefits in some fashion anyway. And we're going to have to increase taxes on the working population, on the non-retired population, to fund this, and that's going to take some money out of the economy. But the trade-off is, because of the significant share of retirees in Alaska, the trade-off in Alaska is going to be that we're going to be net losers if we don't solve the Social Security problem, and it'll be an even greater net loss if we have to cut benefits deeply, or if we hit the X date and the benefits suddenly plunge, as they are projected to do, and we have a segment of the population that's not ready for it. So it's a serious issue that people keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, you saw this 15 years ago, you saw this 10 years ago. I think we talked about it on the show in the early 2010s as one of those issues that was out there that needed to be solved. We haven't solved it. It's now 7 years. It'll be 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, and suddenly it'll be a friggin' crisis that we're facing. And Alaska's going to get hit with it. So we need to encourage our federal delegation to deal with this issue in some fashion, so that it's not like the sword of Damocles hanging over both the retirement population and the state's head.
Well, we've known it's been a problem. As you said, we've talked about it multiple times. I know we talked about it. I think that, in fact, was probably close to 10 years ago, my first conversation with Maya McGinnis from the CFRB, where we talked about what was going on with Social Security. And at that point, they were saying that it would be empty by 36, which is the 10 years from now, which is, my retirement age, quote unquote. We already knew that was going to be a problem. But there is, just like in the Alaska with the permanent fund dividend and the size and scope of government, there is no political will to fix what we're talking about here. There's just it just continues to decline, and we'll all be oblivious to it up until the point, and then they'll be shocked, I tell you, that this has happened. I mean, how come we didn't see this sooner? Kind of question mark,
Yeah, well, it's coming, and for those in Alaska who say, well, it's a national issue, we're not going to worry about it here, it has an impact on us here. And it's an issue that we ought to be encouraging our delegation and for those who are involved nationally, at the national level, federally, to address, because it's not getting better. Passage of time makes it worse. I mean, you're correct. A few years ago, CRFB was projecting 2036. Now it's 2032 or 2033 because of reduced contributions and because of the legislation that was passed that's been a bigger draw on or curtailed revenues that are going into the fund. So it's coming quicker than people imagined, and it's going to be significant when it hits.
It's going to hurt. All right, here we go. We're jumping back into it. The last of the weekly top 3. Please like and share, like and follow the show page. Do all that kind of stuff. Here we go. Let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Anthony's got the perfect retirement plan. He says, I'm just banking on the collapse of society in the next 25 years as my retirement plan is stockpiling ammunition and fuel. I figure bullets and fuel will be the new currency once we hit the Mad Max on ice status in Alaska.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Let's hope not.
We joke about it, but I mean, if you're planning on, if you're counting on the government to help with your retirement, you may want to check yourself before you wreck yourself, because that's going to be a tough thing right there. All right, Brad, let's get on to number 3 of the weekly top 3, which is we're going in the wrong direction. which is a commentary on this piece in the News Miner, which has got the priorities of the Fairbanks North Star Borough. They laid out their legislative priorities. This is what they want to the legislature to focus on. We start off with the long trail. I mean, this is all right, Brad, hit me with it. My eyes were rolling so hard as I read this article. give me your thoughts here.
All right. So I've been doing K through 12 segments, K through 12 funding segments, the last few shows. And it's an area that the state increasingly is focusing on. I mean, that's the big battle we just went through on education funding is part of that. We've got a task force that's kicking off the latter part of this month. The governor's got proposals. I mean, there's all sorts of things out there on K through 12 funding. And I think it's going to be an issue that we see come up in the next legislative session. Now, it's going to come up now in the context of declining oil revenues. And that's going to be interesting to see how we deal with that issue in the context of declining oil revenues. But one of the aspects of K through 12 funding that I'm spending a lot of time on, and will ultimately get to a column on, maybe this week, maybe subsequent week, but one of the aspects of K through 12 funding that I find very interesting is the contribution levels between the state and the localities in terms of funding K through 12. We have a combined funding system in the state. Most states do, where the state contributes some, the localities contribute some, and the federal government sort of sprinkles a little bit of federal money, or at least historically has sprinkled a little bit of money since the 60s. Has sprinkled a little bit of money into the mix as well. And I talked a couple of weeks ago about how Alaska is really an anomaly, almost an anomaly in the states, because most of the states have an equal level of state funding and local funding. So generally speaking, federal funding is about 10% of the remaining 90% in average throughout the U.S. 45% of it comes from the state level, and 45 comes from the local level. And that sort of equivalency helps drive cost control, because the local school boards are making decisions about how to spend money, because the localities have such a significant share of the costs. People locally focus on cost containment, cost constraint at the school board level, and that has the ability, or that has the effect of driving cost containment in some states because of that high local content. Alaska is an anomaly because we have about 10%. Let's take the 10% federal contribution. It's a little bit more in Alaska, but just think of the 10%. Of the 90% remaining, about 20% 25% comes from the localities. The remainder, 65 to 70%, is coming from the state. So the contribution level by the state is a lot higher in Alaska than nationally. And I think, as we've discussed on the show before, I think one of the pieces of the solution to our K through 12 issue is to increase the local share of funding, to increase the concentration at the local level on cost control and on finding efficiencies that exist in the K through 12 system. I think we've lost that, as I've explained on previous shows. I think we've lost that because we have too much at the state level, and the localities say, we contribute a little bit, but the state picks up most of that. And when we need increased funding, we'll just look to the state to pick up that. So there's not a match between cost responsibility and cost contribution going on in Alaska, and I think that's part of the problem. So I've talked a lot about increasing the local share. I was reading through the recommendations of the Fairbanks North Star Borough, the advice they were going to give their legislators. And these paragraphs just stuck out to me. One request that went before the Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly involves the state fully funding education to meet basic needs and eliminating the requirement for local contributions. Municipalities with education powers are required to provide a minimum contribution based upon total assessed taxable value of property, which is subtracted from the amount that the state allocates to school districts. Greer Hopkins, proposed an amendment moved by an assembly member to include a legislative request that the state not reduce education funding as communities grow. Hopkins argued that reduced funding places the burden on local taxpayers' shoulders. It urges the legislature, the request urges the legislature to change the way the state's basic need formula is written to reduce local contribution, if not eliminate it entirely. That's going to add. I mean, let's think through the consequences. That's going to add to the state's problem. Because if you reduce local contribution and you say that the school districts need the same amount, what that's doing is pushing more money, more obligation to the state, forcing the state's contribution level to grow even higher, not because of increased funding, just because the local contribution level is being reduced. I think that goes in the wrong direction. And it starts moving us to a position where the situation gets worse, because the localities think, well, state's going to pick up the burden, state's going to pick up the spending. So what do we care? We don't need to find efficiencies. We don't need to find funding sources. We don't need to think about cost constraints. It's all the state's burden. Let the state deal with it. And that's just, it was shocking to me to see the Fairbanks North Slope Borough or the North Star Borough making that recommendation.
Yeah, and again, you went over the details of this last week, and my question was, again, the equity portion of it, and you said that has to do with the way the money's accounted for as far as the federal equity, when they say, that's why you have a cap on contributions in the state, local contributions.
You have a cap on local contributions in part because of the federal disparity test. And the federal disparity test is that you for the federal money, to get the federal money in the way the state's using it, you can't have more than a 20% disparity between the lowest funded system and the highest funded system in the state. But there are ways to fix that in a way that the federal money still comes in, just doesn't count toward the state, and to eliminate the disparity test and move forward on that basis.
All right. Well, Brad, there's a lot to unpack today. A lot of stuff to go over. Folks, I'm sure we'll be going back and looking at it. If you want to see the charts that Brad talked about, you can go to the landmine column that he did on Friday, or you can come back and rewatch the replay here on Facebook or YouTube or Rumble. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, thank you so much for coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, hour 2 is dead ahead. We will continue the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Yeah. Oh, in fact, that was the chart that you had last week. There was that chart that had the contributions with the averages. Where is that? Right here. Here it is. This is the chart with the average contribution.
That's impressive. You can pull that up.
Yeah, it's great. But you look at the average, the U.S. average for state and local, according to the various sources, and you can see it right there that the local contribution is in the mid 40s, almost to the low to mid 40s in every way. And in Alaska, it's basically 20, 22, 23, right in there. So, it's a big deal. Now, would we have to change the way that we account for the federal dollars? Yes, to make it work. But, the idea that they are somehow saying what we need to do is eliminate the local contributions entirely. you know what that's code for, right, Brad? That's code for what we'd really like to do is we'd like to spend that money on something else. They're not going to stop. They're not going to refund that back to the taxpayer. If that happened to go along, what they would do is they would take that money that they were contributing to the schools and they would then spend that on some other program in the borough.
Yeah, but at the state level, I mean, Greer was a state representative at one time. David Guttenberg was a state representative at one time. I mean, just think about what you're doing at the state level. We're already straining at the very edge of we're beyond the edge when you look at at the EIA numbers. We're at beyond the edge in terms of what the state can fund. We're beyond the edge in terms of the state's funding power based upon the state's current fiscal situation, fiscal formulas. We're beyond the edge of what the state can fund. And if all of a sudden we do away with local contribution, which, you know, is in the 20s, it should be higher, but at least it's in the 20s. If you do away with local contribution, all of a sudden all that shifts to the state. And so you have that additional burden on the state even before you start the conversation about the state needing to provide even more. And the state just doesn't have the capacity. So we're dealing. I mean, one way to look at this might be, oh, well, they're trying to set up K through 12 spending cuts, because if you reduce the local contribution, the state doesn't have the capacity to contribute more. Then you end up with less for the school system because the local contribution is suddenly walked away from it. I doubt that's what Greer has in mind, but you're setting up a situation in which the state can't handle this. State already can't handle it. And you're setting up a situation with the state in which the state can't handle it. And you've just screwed up the incentives. The incentives, the ability to control spending is at the local level. The ability to find consolidation, the ability to find efficiencies, the ability to find places to cut spending is at the local level, because that's where the money's being spent. Those are the people deciding where to spend it. And if all of a sudden they don't have any funding obligations, then you know, they don't have any constraints. They say, it's all the state's responsibility.
Sky's the limit. Yep. Sky's the limit. I did have to, and I didn't mean, I had to chuckle because we started with a long trail. That was the first thing that they said on the whole discussion, was that we need the long trail. You know, and then they went on to educational components and everything else. It is, it's, I think it, again, nobody's checking the temperature of the room. Right. Or maybe they are. Maybe that's where Fairbanks is at these days. Maybe it's the dependency state is alive and well in the Fairbanks area. All right, Brad, we got about 2 minutes here. Give me your thoughts here as the election season starts to shape up. What do you think we're going to be seeing? What are you going to be watching here for the upcoming election?
I'm going to be watching whether candidates are realistic. Candidates are facing the economic situation, the fiscal situation the state's facing. Whether the candidates acknowledge that there's a potential huge downside coming on the oil revenue side, and how to deal with that, and what their comments are and what their positions are with respect to fiscal plan. And I think that's to me. That's going to be the big issue for 2026. I mean, we're going to have big deficit the legislature is going to have to deal with for FY26. It's going to be a lot less revenue for FY27, and I think candidates are going to need to respond to that. If they don't, I don't think they're realistic candidates. I think they're, you know, out in la la land someplace, and not realistically dealing with the issues that the state is confronting. So that to me is the big issue. And the EIA forecast, the EIA price projections just bring that into very sharp forecast, because sharp understanding, because you can see what that does to revenue. You can see what that does to state revenue almost immediately.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to have to deal with this. It's just that, you know, we're going to have to deal with this, and everybody wants to just kind of ignore the monster in the room and say, it's all going to be fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't worry about it.
Well, and you got people like Will Stepp yesterday who said, oh, well, we're going to have increased production. Yes, that increased production is driving down revenue. We've talked about that on previous shows.
He said, but Brad, wait 10 years, it'll be fine. 10 years, it'll be fine. How do we get through those 10 years? Nobody has a clue, but don't worry, in 10 years, it'll be fine, just fine. All right, Brad. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on board, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we got to go. We'll be back with more. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Again, please like and share if you haven't already. Let's get to it. Here we go. Back with more right after this.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. How are you doing? Are you ready for are you guys ready for this here in the hour two? There's a lot to unpack from the stuff that we went over with Brad. The first segment where he was talking about the EIA reporting and the fact that we're going to be looking at some serious challenges with the revenue for next year is just it's just astonishing. It's just astonishing what we're looking at and what we could be potentially seeing for the coming year. And in that regard, I'm talking about the revenue projections of what's going to happen with oil if oil continues to bottom out. We're looking at that chart that Brad brought up, which shows that if the price of oil does drop, as projected by the IEA and the EIA, I know it's confusing. There's two of them. But if that projected decline continues to where oil in Alaska is in the high 40s, we're talking about the current year that we're in right now. The current fiscal year that we are in right now, we will see a drop of almost $250 million in revenue, expected revenue, which means that we will be running a deficit for this whole year. And then in January of this next year, when the session starts, the first item on the agenda will be a supplemental budgetary spend of $230 to $240 million that they need to do to true up for this year. That's on top of an additional 1.399, it's $1.4 billion in deficit for next year before we even start out of the gate. Even if everything was just flat funded, this current fiscal year, plus whatever inflation or adjusters that are baked into the budget, that we would be facing $1.4 billion on top of the nearly $250 million. So we're, again, $1.75 billion deficit going into next year. That's if everything just remains absolutely flat. And that doesn't include, and Barbara just mentioned the fire season and everything else. That doesn't include anything else in a supplemental budget that would include extra fire seasons or anything else. That's just in the revenue power, the earnings that we would have. There would be an earnings deficit by the end of the year. And these numbers are huge. And I don't want to be the guy that's always the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. But if we don't acknowledge that there are some serious issues here and some serious problems, it's going to, and this is just the minimum. This doesn't account for everything. This is just the deficit that we're showing. That I have a chart up on the screen for you folks who are listening in radio. The chart up on the screen says 1.399 billion dollar deficit next year. That's just from the oil prices. We already had $1 billion deficit that was projected because of the spending of what our projected revenue is. It's going to be $1.5 billion lower than that. And so, again, a $2 billion deficit is not out of the realm of possibility here, folks. And do you really think, do you really think that there will be a PFD next year if this is what we're going to be facing? Do you really think that there won't be some kind of discussion on taxation? Or do you think that this will force them to live within their means, to cut the budget? Do you think that this is what it's going to take to force them to cut their budget? A $2+ billion deficit. Do you think that this is now we're going to have to look at it? Do you really think that that's what's going to happen? Because dalali. This is not going to be fun stuff. And yet we've got borough assemblies, and I'm going to go back to, I'm going to pick on Fairbanks here for a little bit, my old hometown, my old alma mater. I spent time on the borough assembly there in Fairbanks, so I kind of been there, done that. They put together their annual legislative priorities list. This happens every year. It's where they come up and they say, well, this is what we think you should focus on. This is what we want you to focus on, legislature, for us. And their first priority is the supported development of the proposed Alaska Long Trail, which is that 500-mile national scenic walking trail from Fairbanks to Seward. And I mean, this is a very complex thing because a lot of it would include private property and basically, I don't know if it would be eminent domaining or if it's just an easement or whatever, but they would have to consolidate a whole bunch of different trails and put it in there. And this is a multi-million-dollar operation. Now, David Guttenberg says, "Oh, this is going to help us economic development, tourism in the borough. I mean, it's going to be great. 500 miles. There'll be so many new tourists walking from Seward to get here. It'll be amazing." And what killed me was he said the amendment doesn't require us to do anything. It just says support it. It's low impact, high return. It doesn't require it. The money that would be poured into this thing is money that could be spent on other. If you want to create a long trail and sure, get together. There's already a nonprofit. I don't know how much they are spending, millions of dollars, according to the 990s that I pulled here a couple of years ago when we first started talking about the Long Trail. That they've got, a couple $1 million a year in personnel costs in their whole office of 4 or 5 people who are using, public dollars and donated dollars to then go out and ask for more public dollars and donated dollars. And it's crazy. But this is one of the big priorities here. Oh, we've got to do this. And then, of course, the discussion that Brad just brought up, the fact that they want to eliminate the local contributions for schooling. One request involved the state fully fund education, eliminating the requirement for local contributions. The municipalities are required to provide a minimum of 2.65 mils, essentially. That's the minimum based on the total assessed property value in their municipality. 2.65 mils. And they're basically saying we need to eliminate the local requirement. Now, is that to give tax relief to folks? Is that to reduce the no, that money is already there. They say at one point, Grier Hopkins said the reduced funding places the burden on local taxpayers' shoulders. And so what we need to do is we need to really, that's the state's reduced funding when the community grows. Like if the community gets bigger and their taxable property value goes up, then their contribution goes up. And that reduces the state fund because the local contributions have grown. And Hopkins said, well, that places the burden on local taxpayers' shoulders. Well, shouldn't it? If community is growing, it's going to cost more to do those things. I mean, isn't that kind of how that's supposed to work in some ways? But no, the answer is just throw all that off. Throw all the local tax requirements off and just put it on the state. How are you going to pay for that? How are you going to? I mean, you want to spend millions on a long trail, and I know I keep coming back to the long trail, but it's just stupid. Millions of dollars that they wanted. They had $9 million in the budget a couple of years ago for the long trail. $9 million for a walking trail, 500 miles through the Alaskan wilderness. That makes sense, right? But they want to drop all the local requirements for local contributions to the schools and tell the state that they need to fully fund education. Where is the money? Again, let me go back to what we were just talking about a minute ago. $1.4 billion deficit just based on oil prices. That's on top of the deficit that's already been projected at current oil prices. Right? I mean, this is it. This is always the legislative priority list is always like the dream sheet, right? It's always like when you ask your kid, give me a list of things you might want for your birthday or Christmas. I don't know if you guys did that, but we did that with our kids. Like, tell me what you really want for Christmas, give me a list. And man, there would be some crazy stuff on that list, right? If you added up the whole list, it's a $4,000 list of things that they want, and you tell them ahead of time, we'll pick something off the list. We'll pick a few things, but again, you're not getting everything on the list. Just give us the list. Well, this is like a dream sheet. This is like a wish list. But the fact that they put things on there that again, don't really make any sense economically, or put things on there like eliminating the need for local requirements, local contributions to schools, and just tell the state to fully fund it all. Again, Grier Hopkins was a legislator. He should understand what the problem here is. And yet what we're looking at is a $2 billion deficit for the coming year. And he's like, what would make that better? Let's make the state pay for all of our education. Forget the local contribution. I mean, forget the fact that, we already spend I don't even know what the school budget. I don't know. I don't even know how much the school in Fairbanks gets from the local contribution anymore as far as dollars, but it's in the tens of millions of dollars from local contributions. Let's just ask the state for that instead. I mean, again, folks, there has to come a point where somebody has to say, how do we pay it at all? How do we pay for it all? Okay, you turn it all over to the state. The state's the one that's on the hook for everything now. There's no more local contribution. I mean, again, first, do you think that local contribution will go back and you'll get a tax refund? They'll reduce your taxes and your mill rates appropriately? Or do you think that they'll be like, well, the money's here already. They're already paying it. Why don't we use it for something else? Which one of those two things do you think will happen? Should I find the Jeopardy music while you think about it? Which one of those things do you think is going to happen? This whole thing is, I mean, we can cry and bitch and complain about it and everything else, but this is what's been going on in this country for years. And eventually, and maybe it won't be this year, maybe it won't be next year, maybe it won't be 10 years from now. But I fully believe that somewhere in my lifetime, the music is going to stop. And like I said earlier, there won't be any more chairs to sit on, musical chairs, right? Because that's what we've been playing this whole time, is a game of financial musical chairs. They kick the can down the road, the music plays, the next guy jumps into the chair, and then the music starts again. And by the time it's all said and done, there'll be one guy or gal sitting there holding the bag, and there won't be any more chairs, and they'll be like, what do we do now? Well, now the wheels come off the bus. Sorry. You're the one that's left holding the bag. Sorry, sweetheart. It's all you. I mean, I can't be the only one that's looking at this and going, that doesn't make any sense. Eliminate the local requirement for contributions. Have the state fully fund it, but the state is broke. Where do you expect that money to come from? Unless this is a way to stealthily try and get some kind of income tax or because that's the only way to fix this. If you're not going to cut, which is probably the fastest and easiest way, doesn't require any overhead, doesn't require anything else. But if you're not going to cut, then the only way to fix the lack of money problem is to tax. So here we are. Boy, I wish I had more. I wish I could just look at this and go, oh, it'll be fine. But I can't. I read this and I go, what is wrong with you people? All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. The economic activity of Harold is convinced that the economic activity of the Long Trail would be many millions over the cost. And don't worry about the Long Trail because I don't even hike anyway. I actually hiked this weekend, but you're right. You know better than me. I'm sorry. What was I thinking? We shall all defer to Harold from now on because he obviously is the smartest critter in the room. Melissa says Grier also submitted a deficit budget to the assembly. So, yeah, it's one of those things. Okay. Let's see. Seeing if there's anything else. Crazy is an understatement. I said it's crazy. Polly says it crazy is an understatement. Greg says, gather your friends and spend your money on trails. Don't expect the government to pay for it and do it. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Here's the solution, says David. to the K-12 funding and state deficit problem allow education savings accounts, which would cost the state about $7,000 per student versus today's nearly $22,000 per student. Yeah. I mean, it's we've been talking about that, right? There's a scenic overlay on this long trail, 11 miles on either side of the trail. Okay. I mean, okay. 11 miles. Okay. All right. I mean, it just whatever. Whatever. So, yeah, taking the dividend and taxes will depopulate a lot. This is Ken's pointing out that the doom loop that we talked about. You know, if you do that, if you continue to do the things that you're doing, you will have a out-migration problem because people will go somewhere else. You know, that's just the way it is. People will go somewhere else, and that just and that will just be that'll be the future. Oh, kicking the can down the road works for most other states. Why are we different than California? I mean, that's the thing. California, though, is only going to be able to do that for so long, right? That's part of the problem that they've had, is that they continue this. Who was it? Was it Jerry Brown that brought it back into balance for a while? And then it just went off the rails again after that. Was it Schwarzenegger or Gary Brown? Anyway, there's your question right there. Do you think it can continue indefinitely? That is the major question there. It's happened in countries. I mean, you look at Weimar Germany, and it was all great and well and good. And this, don't worry, it'll never affect us. It'll always be fine until it's not. Oops. Sorry. Oh, man. Okay. All right. I got to get off this topic because I'm agitated. I'm agitated by it. A couple other stories that are coming up, including the latest on the governor's race and the local races in down in the Kenai. They finally got there because there was nobody who was going to run in the Kenai. I think a lot of people were waiting for that last minute to see what was going to happen, but we'll get into some of the details on that as well here as we jump into it. Okay, we're 5 seconds out. Let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Why haven't you liked it yet? Why?
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. Well, howdy. I decided to get off the topic of, it's just making me mad. It's just irritating. It's irritating me, man. So we're gonna get into this here to talk about a few things. So we've got the latest on the gubernatorial race. There's a new candidate in the gubernatorial race. There's a whole slew of new candidates down here in the Kenai, because if you recall, Friday was the deadline. And as of, I think it was Wednesday that I first reported the story on the air down here, was that there was, like 11 seats or something open, and there was only, there was a handful of seats that had no candidates at all, and only one of them had a contest. The rest of them there was people running unopposed in them. So we can talk about that as well. And the latest from the courts on the transgendered student bathroom policy in the Matsu, which people were up in arms about. Even though when I read it, I was like, well, that's the policy and you have a problem with it? Anyway, we can talk about that as we go here. But first, let's talk a little bit about the gubernatorial race. As predicted, former Alaska Senator Tom Begich, state senator, not Mark Begich, Tom Begich, his brother, has filed for governor. Now, he is Nick Begich's uncle. There's a tangled web here. All right. So Nick Begich Sr., the first, is the father of Tom and Mark and Nick the second. And then Nick the second is the father of Nick the third. Does that make it perfectly clear for everybody out there who's on it? But the whole family, with the exception of Nick the second and Nick the third, were Democrats. And there's questions as to whether or not Begich is the sacrificial, Tom Begich is the sacrificial lamb to try and confuse Alaskans on who to vote for in the upcoming congressional race. Because remember, there was a lot of people here who still, even though Nick Begich won the Congress seat, I still heard people say, oh, well, he's Begich, he's a Democrat. I mean, that's like, no, he's not, but that was the feeling. The name Begich has got kind of a stink on it, right? Because of what Mark did and Obamacare and all the other stuff. So that name had some baggage with it. Begich had baggage. But now Nick Begich has won. He's been doing some great stuff in Congress. And now the Democratic Party, although we haven't heard yet who they're going to try and run against Nick, maybe this is a way to help confuse the situation. Because even in the political poll, what was the Progressive Forward? What was the name of it? Progress Forward, I think, is the name of the Data for Progress. That was the name of the group that did the polling. Even the Data for Progress, which is a progressive polling situation, right? So Democrats, even in the polling for progress rates, Tom Begich only received 2.3% of the vote. Now Mary Peltola was in there, but he only received 2.3% of the vote. Click Bishop got more. I think it was close to what Nancy Dahlstrom got. Right? Shelley Hughes and Bernadette Wilson got 4 times what Tom Begich got. So I don't know what this is now. The Must Read story says he's the only Democrat that's filed. I thought, and maybe I've been wrong this whole time, I thought that there was a letter of intent filed by a Democrat out of Fairbanks, a lady that I'd never heard of, and maybe I'm misinformed. So I suppose I have to go back to the Division of Elections websites to actually figure it out. But if that's the case, that means we got 9, and then Treg Taylor will be 10. We'll have 10 candidates in the race, 1 Democrat, and then Click Bishop, and then the rest of them Republicans. So this ought to be really, really interesting. And I think what that says is, first of all, that means that Mary Peltola will probably not be running for governor, although they were desperately trying to get her in the race. I think that there was a lot of pressure behind the scenes to try and get Mary Peltola in the race for governor. Now, does that mean that she's going to run against Dan Sullivan? Does that mean that she's going to, I don't think she'll take another shot at the congressional race against Begich again. I don't think that'll happen. They're going to have to find some other candidate in there to do that. But what does it mean? Because Peltola is their golden child right now. She is they want to, they want to keep doing it. Now, there's a lot of talk as to whether or not they will try and run Peltola against Sullivan or somebody else. I don't think they will. That seat wasn't even listed recently in like one of the big Democratic mailers of what they consider to be vulnerable seats. Alaska seats weren't even mentioned. But, we'll have to see where this goes. But Tom Begich is now running in the race. And we'll see if we can get him on the program to talk about how do we pay for it all? How do we pay for it all? Okay. What did the court say about the I find it unfortunate that we have to talk about the Matsu transgender student bathroom policy. So this was a suit that was brought forward by the ACLU early last year. The new restroom policy, which was approved by the Matsu School Board back in 2022, required students to use bathrooms and locker rooms that correspond with their biological sex. It also requires schools to give students access to single occupancy restrooms or changing rooms. So it wasn't just you have to go to the room that you were, with the gender you were born with, but we will also offer you a private bathroom or a private locker changing room on top of that. The complaint from the ACLU said the court should block enforcement of that policy and prevent disclosure of students' birth genders and legal names in school records, which, anyway, the courts basically said it didn't violate the Constitution because it provides the students with a private bathroom option. Rather than unfairly burdening the student or forcing him to disclose his transgender status, the court found that the district's policy, quote, serves an important governmental interest in safeguarding student privacy in intimate settings for both the transgendered students and the other students. It actually went beyond. It was actually better. The policy does not compel disclosure of gender identity, restrict gender expression, or deny access to the restroom facilities. It goes beyond that because it offers them a private restroom. The ACLU is trying to decide whether they're going to, relitigate this and keep going. I mean, I don't know what they would. I guess they'll be happy when they can force regular people or I don't know, what do you call it? I mean, straight people, when they could force those folks to have to accept transgendered people into the bathroom. That's when they'll be happy. Not that we offered them a private restroom to do what they wanted to do to make everybody comfortable. It's only about making the transgendered person comfortable. Doesn't matter how uncomfortable it makes everybody else. The Matsu's answer was, I thought, brilliant. You have to go to the bathroom, use a restroom that you were assigned with your birth gender, but we'll offer you these private bathrooms as well if you don't feel comfortable with that. Well, okay, great. Problem solved. So we'll see if the ACLU continues on this or not. And finally, down in the Kenai, that was in the Matsu, 11 candidates are running for 5 seats on the borough assembly. So we've got Californsky, District 1, Scott Griebel, Teresa Mulliken, and Joan Core are running. In Nikiski, there's only one candidate. Len Neeson is the candidate. She's running it. So we got a single seat there. 3 candidates are vying for the Soldotna seat, which is District 3. Sergeant Truesdale is one, Mitch Machaud, and Nick Connor. Then in Sterling, you've got Leslie Morton. She's running for re-election. Dale Eicher and Sadie Friedman. Those are the 3 running for that seat. And then the Central District, there's only one candidate running for Central, and that is Michael Hicks. Because Brent Johnson has reached his turn limit and is unable to run. So you've got a 3-way race in 2 seats, and then 2 seats that are running unopposed. So There you go. There you go. And then he got Kenai, and there's other ones down in Kenai, the borough mayors. Kenai vote for city mayor, rather. City mayor and city council candidates. There's other ones there as well, and we can go over that later. All right. Well, we're up against it, so we're going to continue here in just a moment. Chris Story's coming up next. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Back with more after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now. I see Chris Story is down in the he's in the chat here. Let me see if we can add him here and get him going. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. StreamYard is alive and well here.
Okay, good. It's working good. That's what I wanted to I just wanted to make sure.
Actually, through the StreamYard actually bypasses the roadcast, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, if you're on your phone, it's bypassing. Yeah. Are you on your phone or are you on your computer?
The phone, but even still, it's bypassing your roadcast. I mean, so if you're having trouble with your roadcaster, if we come through the StreamYard here,
oh yeah. It's still coming through my roadcaster, but I was having a problem where my phone would not connect to my roadcaster for some reason. My cell phone. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was going to have to reboot the roadcaster in the break if for some reason it wasn't working or whatever. But
this StreamYard link bypasses that necessity because
exactly.
your phone. Okay, just want to make sure I was following the.
Are you? And you're using StreamYard on your phone, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, it is a great platform. StreamYard is definitely a great platform to use for all this stuff. Okay. All right. So Chris Story is hanging out with us, and we'll be back to him here in just a second. Meanwhile, let me get. Excuse me while I whip this out here. Let me get this all squared away here, and we'll get things loaded and ready to go. Let me go back and check in with you guys on the check with you guys in the commentary here to see if there's any comments that I missed that are good. Scrolling back, if a new candidate, there we go. One of the Dems race, 8 Republicans, and then Treg, right? So that'll be 9. So then it'll be 10. So there you go. That's 10 people. 10 people in a big race. Oh, it's Greg's birthday today? Woo! Congratulations, my friend. You need to call me later today. In fact, call me later today, Greg. I got to get that project that we talked about squared away. All right. Let's see. According to Social Security, the average Social Security check for someone retiring in 2025 is $2,000. The projection reduction is 23%, which is $5,536.56, not the $14,000 that Brad stated. Brad was quoting a piece. Where is that link here? Brad was quoting from a piece that came out from the Alaska Beacons. That's where he was quoting that amount. So I don't know. I don't think Brad did the official math on that, Kathy. But I've just posted the link up in the chat room. It's an Alaska Beacon article. It says happy birthday to the Social Security. You could check it out there. Okay. If Tom Begich is a Democrat choice, I feel fairly safe to say the governor's mansion will stay in GOP hands. I'd be more nervous with Peltola. Yeah. I don't think Tom is going to get much traction there. But the question is, what does this mean for Click Bishop? That's going to be the bigger question. If there is a strong Democrat in the race, what does this mean for Click Bishop? Let's see. Nick isn't. Okay. Peltola will not run against Sullivan, says Miguel. That's what he thinks. And you may be right. I don't know. We'll see. I could run a Democrat. Last time I checked, says David, Sullivan only has a weak no-name opponent, and Nick Begich doesn't have an opponent at all. The Democrat Party doesn't seem to have a viable statewide bench right now. They're strongest in district races because of ranked choice voting, moderate Republicans, and ground game. That's all. It might be a solid analysis. And my Seward buddy Ratner has entered the race as well. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, ranked choice voting is Click Bishop's only hope, says Polly. I agree with that. I would like to see my district host a debate down here on the peninsula, says Cindy. Well, hey, make it happen, Cindy. I'd love to be. If you need help, we'll figure it out. Get with me. We'll do it. All right. Well, Chris' story is waiting in the wings, and we are ready to go here. So let's jump on board and make all this chiz happen, shall we? We're going to be positive, damn it. And even if it kills us, we're going to do positive stuff. Chris, what's the topic for this show here for this segment?
The psychology of motivation.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Psychology of motivation. All right. Well, here we go, my friends. Like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's get to it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. I'm dragging it out here because I had 5 extra seconds. That's sometimes how it works. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I am that. I'm a pain in the show. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the program. Hour 2 of the big radio show. We're finishing up today with Chris Story, the man from Homer. It is our weekly life coaching lesson. And he's here today to talk with us about the psychology of motivation. Before I bring him on, though, I should mention that his upcoming book, The Millionaire Code, should be coming out here shortly on Audible, and I hope you get a chance to go out and listen to it. I really enjoyed narrating it. And I just got a brand new, can I tease the name of the new book, Chris? Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
So the new book that he's just laid in my lap, I mean, what is this, the 5th, 6th, 8th book you've written this year? I mean, you're prolific. It's called The Schoolyard Millionaire. And I'm really looking forward to cracking that one open and getting into reading that as well. You've been a busy boy.
In the wee hours, in the cracks of the day, I find writing is actually relaxing for me, and the research goes into it, which is interesting because it's the research that I'm doing for this next book I'm writing about negotiating that led me to, quote unquote, the psychology of motivation. So I find it relaxing. To me, it's a hobby when I'm not, doing something else. I'm really invested in reading and thus writing about a particular topic. But the Schoolyard Millionaire is a lot of fun. It's actually selling in paperback quite well, but I'm really anxious to hear it in your narration because I can already hear the characters coming to life. But I think the idea of handing a kid a book is great, but then also having this story told to them with your voices and caricature of each character, I think is going to be really cool. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Well, I appreciate that, my friend. I have a good time reading it. You've got great characters, and there's always a good life lesson in there, and it always makes me think. I mean, it's like studying a book. When you read it, when you narrate it, it's like you're super studying, so it's it definitely is an education for me to be able to read the book. So I appreciate the opportunity. Okay, the psychology of motivation,
which is a big part of negotiating, is trying to, when you enter a negotiation and you're thinking win-win, look, I want to create an opportunity for both people. And this is what we see happening between Trump and Putin and Zelensky right now with our 3 nations and all of Europe sending their heads of state over as well to enter this negotiation. If anybody's sitting at that table thinking it's going to be win-lose, they've already lost. Everybody loses in that case. So you have to think win-win, which is what Trump has spent his entire life doing, and building deals and building buildings and all this stuff. So love him, like him, hate him, it doesn't matter. You must admit this is what he spent his life doing. And so I'm writing about negotiating. So I'm watching this Putin, Zelensky, Trump negotiation through that lens, and I'm thinking about motivation a lot. And I'm thinking about, well, what are the motives? What is the goal? What are the outcomes that people want in any negotiation? And so I started doing a deep dive into motivation. And so by definition, motivation is an internal or external drive or influence. And we know, people that are very internally driven. Their motivation comes from deep within, and you never need to present the stick to them. They've got their own carrot they're chasing. And, and then there's others of us in different walks of our life that need a stick. We need the threat. We need to look, if I don't have a deadline, if I'm not working towards a deadline, I might not have the drive to get this thing done. So for me personally, I set arbitrary deadlines for myself, whether it be, publishing my next book, or it's a goal or something I want to achieve or do. I have to set artificial goals or deadlines to push me and be an external sort of force on me. But getting back on point about negotiating and how to master lasting motivation, I found that there's a certain set of maybe 4 or 5 things that matter the most when you're trying to create that internal drive or motivation for yourself. And it starts with autonomy. It starts with the fact that none of us dream of being micromanaged. Even those of us that got married, we don't dream of being, nobody wants to be micromanaged. You want to have the freedom to do something because you want to. So when you're helping somebody else find that drive, if you want to influence somebody and have influence over their motivation or help them find some motivation, it's got to be internal. It has to be an autonomous decision that somebody has complete control over their own destiny and their own purpose. Otherwise, you're going to run, that tank will eventually run dry, and you'll need to bring the stick back out.
I could see that for sure. And we definitely have to find that self-motivation, and if you're, it's one thing that I am, as a business owner, and now, being a full-time, being my own, I've always had a side gig, right? You always had to be a little motivated to do your side hustle, because, but it wasn't your main thing. So you always had to find that self-motivation. But once you're self-employed, then you've got all the motivation in the world to keep things rolling. You know what I mean? So I definitely appreciate trying to find that internal drive to get things going.
I found tricks for my own self because I've been self-employed since I was 19, and I call it gainfully unemployed. And I've become unemployable. And I just find little hacks in language like that remind me that, oh yeah, I'm gainfully unemployed. Like I get to choose and I have pure autonomy. And yet I find myself working, and I put air quotes around working, but 6-7 days a week. I'm communicating with people 6 to 7 days a week. There is no Monday through Friday, but I have pure autonomy over that. And that's key and fundamental to mastering lasting motivation. And then the second theory I ran across in this research is expectancy. And it's called, in psychological terms, expectancy theory, meaning, in other words, your efforts will lead to results. So you're autonomously working towards something, and you have an expectancy that you'll be rewarded. There will be a reward at the end of this. Absent that expectancy, then you lose motivation, you lose internal drive. Even if there's somebody with a stick behind you chasing you, you're going to lose that drive if there's not some expectancy that what you're doing will lead to something you want, that result is waiting for you if you'll put in that effort.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's an expectancy, and if you'll get the rewards that I don't know, I can't remember exactly how you put it now here just a minute ago, but essentially, if you work the plan, you'll get the results you want. If you don't work the plan, you'll get the results you deserve, kind of thing, right? I mean,
right, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to work it. You're going to get the results one way or the other. Which results do you want? That goes back to, I think, the key motivator of the carrot and the stick kind of thing. But yeah, you're going to get the results. You just got to work it.
And I'm thinking in terms also of like raising children. How do you've got to be able to let them know that there is a reward for putting in the effort. As we go back to school here, there's reward in the effort you're going to put in your schoolwork, and it's going to be, there's sort of these short-term goals that you're going to be able to receive these rewards, but then there's also then the long term. But that's more difficult to help them see the longer term. So we build shorter expectancy and we build shorter reward times to keep them motivated and help them become self-motivated, because that makes your job as a parent so much easier. And then I think it's in terms of the next piece of the puzzle that I found as I did this research is goals that stretch. And like Og Mandino was famous for saying, may your reach always exceed your grasp. Keeping the goal beyond what you can do. Like if you're trying to get into shape and you can easily do 5 push-ups, better add that 6 the next day, and then on to 10 and then 20 and 50. You've got to keep stretching. It's a little bit like the woman who tried to cross the English Channel, lost sight of it because of the fog, and she cramped up. The very next time, with about equivalent training, it was a clear, beautiful day, and she made it all the way across because she could see her goal. But you've got to be able to stretch to meet that goal. Otherwise, you start to lose that motivation and you wind down if it's not stretching you. And the next piece of it is self-efficacy, which is a great term to drop at a party and, just throw it out there at the punch bowl but
because you're so adroit, right?
Yes.
Adroit.
Ooh,
I'm going to use the
another
word
good term.
adroit and self-efficacy in the same sentence. Yes.
This is not the adroitness you seek. So it's belief. Self-efficacy, meaning you believe you can do something. It's like, if we have to come up with an axiom, then it's okay. It's what Henry Ford said: if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right either way. Belief in the ability, the belief that you can accomplish something, and that self-efficacy is what helps you keep fuel in the tank. And so none of these individually are the answer. It's collectively understanding what keeps the tank full, what keeps you moving forward. How do you keep that fire lit, even on your 50th hour of working this week or your 10th year working towards something? Because absent that self-motivation and that internal drive, it just doesn't last. And then you begin to resent something that you used to love. And the last piece I'll mention real quick is just work state flow. When a challenge matches your skills. So if you're constantly sharpening the saw, you're constantly gaining more skill to meet the next challenge, you'll go into a work state flow where time stands still and you just love what you're doing, to a point where you're like, retirement, what's that? I love doing this work.
That sounds like every day for me. My wife's like, oh, I come out of the studio and it's almost 6 o'clock at night. She's like, oh, so you're finally done. Yeah, time got away from me. I was just, you're enjoying what you do and you're working it. Chris Story, you can find him at ilovehomeralaska.com, where he's got links to everything, his books, his podcasts, his pottery, his everything. I don't know. Everything's over there. Just go to ilovehomeralaska.com and Chris Story will get you squared away. As always, my friend, it's great to talk with you, and I appreciate you being part of it today. Thank you for bringing some positivity to the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, folks, we are out of time for today. We got to go. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you tomorrow, 8 a.m. or 6 a.m. Oh, almost 6 or 8 a.m. If they got here at 8 a.m., it'd be done. All right, Chris, final thoughts. Anything else, my friend? Did we get it all?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I felt that was complete. We got the motivation out there. And I think it's, motivation kind of gets a bad rap. Zig Ziglar used to be asked by people like, well, does motivation last? And he goes, no, neither does bathing. I think you should do it every day. I think, you gotta keep coming back to the grindstone and getting that motivation from within, however you get it. So I hope one or two of these ideas landed with somebody who needed it. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's it. If you touch one person today, you should go to jail. I mean, if you've touched one person's heart today, you should go to. You should. It's good stuff, and we appreciate that. Of course, Mike. The question that I need to ask real quick: when's the next Watchmen book coming out? That's, next Jacob Mann book.
Thank you. I appreciate the question, because it tells me, oh, you actually want to read it. I've got the story fleshed out. I've got the outline in my mind, and I've got probably the first 6 chapters written. I just need to get back to it, but I've got these other ideas that I feel like, okay, I've got to get these out into the world. And then once I've given birth to them, then I can go back to Jacob, because Jacob, that to me, that is, while it is real estate related in as much as he's a realtor, it's not as central or integral to my business of Story Real Estate and what it is we're trying to do through the Backyard Millionaire. So kind of, I don't want to say it's taken a back seat because this idea is burning in my mind, but Jacob's going to have to wait till this winter when I can really focus on him.
Oh man, I really want to see it. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to wait. You can find all of his books, including the Jacob Mann series at ilovehomeralaska.com, read by yours truly. Ooh. All right.
Expertly read.
Thank you, my friend. Good to talk with you. We'll see you next week, Chris. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
All right. Folks, we got to go. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.